What happens when a CEO joins the lowest-ranking team in his company and learns a worker is paying out of pocket just to show up? Victor Raines stood at the edge of the industrial parking lot, dressed in a faded hoodie, steel toe boots, and a baseball cap pulled low. A fake name badge read Danny. His beard had grown out over the past 3 weeks, and his voice was rougher than usual from practicing a deeper tone. No one would guess he was the man who bought the logistics company 6 years ago and turned it into a thriving 11-location operation across 3 states. He'd never visited this location, Warehouse 6, in person. Not once. He'd hired a district manager to handle the day-to-day across all sites, but lately, complaints had started filtering through the cracks. Orders delayed. Staff turnover rising. A few customer reviews even said packages arrived damaged. But the final straw was when a longtime employee from another location told him the team at Warehouse 6 worked like ghosts. No one saw them, no one thanked them, and apparently no one stayed more than 6 months, so Victor decided to see it for himself. "Hey, you the new guy?" a woman asked, tugging a clipboard out from under her arm. She squinted at him through plastic safety glasses. "Yeah, Danny," he said, "first day." She gave him a once-over, then nodded. "I'm Teresa, don't expect much training, we're already short 2 guys this week." "You ever packed pallets before?" "Once or twice," he lied. "Cool, you'll be with Ezra, he's solid." Inside, the warehouse was a stream of motion. Forklifts beeped. Conveyor belts groaned. People moved like they were on a clock, except no one looked happy to be there. Ezra, a stocky guy in his late 20s with calloused hands and a quiet demeanor, showed Victor the ropes without much small talk. They loaded heavy boxes of auto parts, wrapped pallets, and labeled shipments. It was repetitive, physical, and non-stop. 3 hours in, Victor was drenched in sweat. Ezra hadn't stopped once. "Break?" Victor asked. 15 minutes. "But only if you didn't clock in late," Ezra muttered, stacking another box. Victor followed him out to the loading dock where a few workers sat on overturned crates smoking or checking their phones. Ezra pulled out a sandwich wrapped in foil and sat down with a tired sigh. "So how long you been here?" Victor asked, taking a seat beside him. 8 months, which basically makes me a veteran around here," Victor chuckled. "That bad?" Ezra shrugged. "People don't leave because of the work." "It's the way we get treated," Victor frowned. "How so?" Ezra hesitated, then looked over his shoulder before leaning in a bit. "Let me ask you something. You get paid today." "Yeah, my direct deposit hit." "Same. You know how much we make?" Victor nodded vaguely. $14.50 an hour, right?" Ezra nodded. "Now guess how much it costs me to park in that lot." He pointed out toward the fenced-in gravel patch just beyond the warehouse. Victor blinked. "Wait, what?" $30 a week. Payroll deducts it." "No one tells you until you see your second check." Victor felt his chest tighten. "They make you pay to park. At your job," Ezra smiled, but not in a happy way. "Yeah, and if you park on the street, you risk getting towed. Happened to a girl last month. Lost her job cause she was late 3 times. Victor stared out at the lot, the fence, the little sign that said permit parking only. "Who approved that?" Ezra gave him a look. "You think anyone tells us? All we know is that's the rule. And if you complain, management says, you're free to work somewhere else." Victor didn't respond. His stomach turned over the next few days. He kept working side by side with Ezra. The warehouse was fast, loud, and clearly short-staffed. Teresa, the floor lead, was doing her best, but it was obvious she was stretched thin. The manager, a guy named Nalan, rarely came down to the floor. When he did, he mostly barked orders or criticized people for moving too slow. Victor watched people skip breaks, lift dangerously heavy loads without help, and still get scolded for not hitting quotas. He kept a low profile, asking quiet questions where he could. Most people assumed he was just another temp. Warehouse 6 went through them fast. No one questioned his name or story. He hadn't met Nalan before, and the company was big enough that most people never saw the owner anyway. But what stuck with Victor the most was Ezra. Every shift, Ezra showed up early, stayed late. helped others without being asked. Once he even gave a newer worker his gloves after the guy ripped his. Hands matter more than rules, he'd said. Victor had built this company to be different, to be better. But this wasn't what he promised himself when he bought it. And that parking fee, that was going to be the thread he pulled. He just didn't know yet how deep the unraveling would go. Victor arrived 10 minutes before shift again, just like yesterday, standing at the edge of the loading bay while the fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Ezra was already inside, tightening the straps on a pallet jack. Neither of them spoke as they began loading the first shipment of engine components. The air was damp with chemical residue from a spill the night shift hadn't cleaned properly. No warning signs, no gloves offered. "Careful with that corner," Ezra said, motioning with his chin. "Last week, someone slipped on that exact spot." Victor adjusted his grip. "They report it?" Ezra gave a short laugh and didn't answer. By mid-morning, the pace had picked up. A truck arrived early and 2 pickers were out sick. Teresa was covering both their routes. Her radio buzzed constantly. She hadn't looked up from her clipboard once in over an hour. Victor kept working, but he started paying closer attention to the way people reacted when Nolan showed up. Around mid-shift, the manager came down from his upstairs office, holding a tablet like it was a badge of authority. His eyes swept the floor, landing on anyone who wasn't in motion. "What's this?" he barked, pointing at a half-finished pallet near Station 4. "Why is this sitting here?" One of the younger workers, a guy named Lewis, stepped forward. "We ran out of shrink wrap. I called for more. You wait for materials now. What is this, a vacation? Move your feet, find another role. Figure it out." Lewis opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Nolan turned and walked off without waiting for a response. Victor didn't say anything, not yet. He wasn't ready to pull the curtain back, but he made a mental note. The tone, the humiliation, the way Lewis tried to hide his face after. Lunch was short and quiet. Ezra sat 2 spots down from Victor this time, eating a banana and staring at the wall like he wasn't really seeing it. Victor chewed slowly. "You ever think about leaving?" Ezra didn't look up. "Sure, every day. So why stay?" Ezra took a long breath. "My little sister's in community college. I pay her books and rent. My mom's not around and my dad's not the type to help. I make it work." Victor nodded once. "You ever consider applying for something higher up?" "I did, 2 months ago." Nolan said I didn't show enough initiative, then gave the role to a guy who's been here 6 weeks. Victor kept his face neutral. "What you do?" "Same thing I always do," Ezra said. "Show up, get it done." That afternoon, Victor was assigned to the outbound dock. The team there was different, older, quieter, and clearly over it. One guy, Tim, was in his 50s and seemed to be nursing an old injury. He limped when he moved, favoring his left side, but still hauled boxes without asking for help. Victor offered to take one of the heavier loads. Tim grunted. "You'll learn not to volunteer for the crap jobs." "You get hurt on the job?" Victor asked. 3 years ago. Slipped on a ramp, shipped me back out with a brace 2 days later. Said if I sat out longer I'd need a doctor's clearance, and that takes weeks. I couldn't afford the downtime. Did you file anything? Workers' comp? Tim shook his head. Didn't want to be labeled soft. You file a claim around here, they stop giving you hours. Suddenly, your name's off the schedule. Victor didn't respond. He just kept stacking. At the end of the shift, Teresa pulled Victor aside. "You've been showing up early, working hard. I appreciate that," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Listen, I'm supposed to tell you about the weekend rotation. You'll get slotted in twice a month. No overtime unless you hit 50 hours. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Is that legal?" She gave him a tired look. "Depends who you ask," he hesitated. "You ever bring this stuff up to HR?" "HR," she snorted. "We don't have an HR rep on site anymore. Not since the last one quit. If you want to file something, you have to email corporate. Nolan screens most of it anyway." Victor's jaw tensed. "What does that mean?" "It means unless someone's stealing forklifts, it doesn't get seen." That night, Victor drove back to his hotel and pulled out his laptop. He opened the company's internal systems. logged in using his real credentials, and dug into the logs for Warehouse 6. The parking deduction was real. 73 employees had it pulled from their checks last cycle. It wasn't a local decision, it had been added 6 months ago by the regional operations lead. No formal memo, no opt-in, he kept digging. The weekend policy had no written documentation. The scheduling system had notes from Nolan manually editing time cards, often slicing off minutes before and after shift start times. Victor leaned back. His hands were clenched around the mouse. The next morning, he returned before sunrise. He didn't change clothes, didn't tie his boots. Just walked into the office upstairs and opened the door without knocking. Nolan looked up from his desk. "You're not supposed to be. I'm Victor Rains," he said, stepping inside. "Owner, founder, CEO, sit down." Nolan's face changed. "Wait, what? I've been here the past 4 days." "On the floor with your team." Nolan rose halfway out of his chair. "Look, if this is about the sit down." Nolan sat. Victor didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The silence did the work. "You're cutting time cards, charging people to park, ignoring safety protocols, denying overtime. Promoting based on favoritism, and worse, creating a culture where people are afraid to speak." "I was following regional guidance," Nolan said quickly. "That parking fee came from above. I am above. You don't get to hide behind that." Nolan opened his mouth again, but Victor held up a hand. "You're done here. Security will escort you out in 20 minutes. Do not speak to anyone on the floor. Do not touch another system. You can't, I can, and I just did." Victor left the office without waiting for a response. He walked downstairs, past the receiving dock and into the break room where Teresa was helping someone with a form. She looked up, startled. Victor pulled off the cap. "I'm not Danny. My name is Victor Rains. I own this company." The room went still. Forks paused midair. A can of soda hissed open somewhere, but no one moved. "I've been working here undercover for the past week. I've seen what you deal with, the conditions, the policies, the leadership." Teresa's hands lowered from the clipboard. "You're serious?" "I am." "Nolan's been removed." Effective immediately. Ezra walked in just as Victor spoke. His eyes widened, but he didn't say anything. Victor turned to him. "You were the reason I stayed. You showed me what this place could be if someone actually cared." Ezra blinked, stunned. I just do my job." "You do more than that. And starting tomorrow, you'll be doing it as a team lead, with the pay to match, full training, full support." Someone let out a breath. A few people clapped quietly, unsure if it was real. Victor looked at the group. "This warehouse is going to change, starting today. No more parking fees. No more time card edits, no more silence." He paused. "And if anyone retaliates against anyone who speaks up, they won't be here the next day. That's a promise." He left the room without another word. There was too much to do, but that was the first time he'd seen anyone in Warehouse 6 smile. And it wouldn't be the last. Victor arrived at Warehouse 6 the following morning in plain clothes, no disguise this time. The sky was still dim, and the lot was quiet except for a few early arrivals. He carried a clipboard under one arm and a black duffel bag in the other. Inside, the warehouse lights buzzed to life one row at a time. Teresa was already there, standing near the central desk with a list of assignments. She looked up as he approached. "They told me you'd be back today," she said, sounding more surprised than skeptical. "I am," Victor replied. "But not to drop in and vanish. I'm staying through the week. We've got work to do." Teresa nodded slowly. "You want to take it from here?" "No," he said. "You keep the floor running. I'll handle the rest." She didn't argue. Victor spent the first hour reviewing shift rosters, equipment requests, and policy documents from a folding table in the break room someone had cleared out for him. He brought in a compliance officer and a safety consultant from headquarters. Neither wore suits. Both blended in and went straight to work assessing conditions, quietly interviewing staff in corners and reviewing the warehouse layout for hazards. By mid-morning, Victor walked the perimeter with a stack of handwritten notes. He stopped by Lewis, the younger worker Nolan had publicly embarrassed days earlier. "You got a minute?" Victor asked, keeping his tone steady. Lewis hesitated. Yes, sir. I'm not here to talk at you, Victor said. I want to know what's missing, what's broken. What would make this place somewhere you'd actually want to stay? Lewis glanced around. You really mean that? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Lewis exhaled through his nose, then gestured to the conveyor line. We've been down one scanner for over a month. Every time we put in a request, it disappears, so we double enter by hand, slows everything. Victor jotted it down. That's fixable. But that's not the worst part, Lewis added. It's the temp contracts. Some of us have been here 5-6 months, no benefits, no guarantees. Just back-to-back weeklies. Victor looked up. You were told why. They say it's budget cautious, but we train temps just to watch them leave. It's a waste. Victor didn't respond immediately. He hadn't approved that model. Somewhere between policy and execution, it had become standard. Thank you for telling me, he said. Lewis nodded, then returned to work. Victor made his way to the machinery zone on the west end, where he found Tim adjusting a jammed belt. The limp in his gait was more noticeable today. No one hovered nearby to assist. You need a hand? Victor asked. Tim didn't look up. I'm okay. I'm not asking to do your job, I'm asking so you don't get hurt. Tim finally turned. I've been doing this longer than most people here have been alive, but yeah, I wouldn't say no. Victor helped realign the belt, then stepped back. How long's this machine been acting up? He asked. 3 weeks, Tim replied. We flagged it. Maintenance said they'd get to it when the parts come in. Victor squatted beside the housing unit, inspecting the makeshift tape holding one of the guards in place. Parts were ordered, he asked. Apparently, Tim said, but they never show up. Victor pushed to his feet. We're going to track every request starting today. If something's flagged and not followed up in 2 business days, it gets escalated directly to me. Tim nodded. Appreciate that. Victor continued through the warehouse, stopping to observe how materials were labeled, how returns were processed, how dispatch confirmed outgoing loads. Every station revealed something new: missing tools, inefficient workflows, or inconsistent training. Most of it wasn't malicious, it was neglect. Processes left to rot from the inside out. By noon, he met Ezra near the rear loading dock. Ezra had just finished helping 2 workers shift a misaligned pallet. His shirt was soaked through, and a cut on his forearm had been hastily taped with warehouse first aid. You shouldn't be covering floor leads and dock ops, Victor said. Ezra straightened. Team's short again, one guy called out. Another had a dentist thing. You're not a stand-in, I know, Ezra said, but I wasn't going to let them fall behind. Victor paused, then handed him a folded sheet of paper. Ezra opened it. His eyebrows lifted. This is a promotion letter, effective immediately. You're now officially operations floor supervisor, with authority to approve shift swaps, request supplies, and override inefficient workflows. Back pay for the last 2 pay cycles. You earned it before I ever showed up. Ezra looked over the paper again. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just lead. Victor stepped away and headed to the office upstairs, not Nolan's, but the secondary room used for archives. He'd set up a temporary hub there. The compliance officer, Julia, was reviewing documents when he entered. What's the word? He asked. 2 things, she said without looking up. 1, over a dozen payroll irregularities. Most are small rounding errors, missed overtime, but they add up. 2, there's a problem with the shift scheduling. Define problem. Schedules are being adjusted without employee confirmation. Some are clocking in at 8, but the system logs them at 8:15. Patterns suggest it was deliberate. Victor exhaled slowly. We need a full audit. Pull 6 months of data. Flag any repeat adjustments. Julia nodded. Already started. He returned downstairs and gathered the team on the main floor. Not everyone, just the senior staff: Teresa, Ezra, Tim, and 3 others who had quietly emerged as informal leaders through the week. I need your help rebuilding this place, Victor said. If we're going to fix it, I need fresh eyes and honest voices. They listened, silent but focused. Tomorrow, we start a new pilot. Every employee will get a direct line to report issues anonymously. Equipment requests won't go through 3 layers, and I'll be here. not behind a screen on the floor beside you. Teresa crossed her arms. This isn't going to be like last time, right? Where change means a memo and nothing else. No, Victor said. Last time I trusted the wrong people to carry out the right vision. I won't make that mistake again. Ezra stepped forward. You want honesty? I do. Then here's truth. People are tired, not just physically. They're tired of being invisible. You want to keep them, show them they matter. Every day, not just when the boss is watching. Victor nodded once. Then let's make that the standard. That night, the walls of Warehouse 6 didn't feel as heavy. There was no celebration, no speeches, but people stayed a little longer, cleaned their stations more carefully, helped others without being asked. And for the first time in a long while, no one looked over their shoulder before speaking. The following Monday, Victor arrived at Warehouse 6 just before opening, his breath clouding in the cold morning air. A delivery van idled near the dock, the driver tapping his steering wheel with the radio low. Victor climbed the steps to the office slowly, holding a folder under one arm. Inside, the atmosphere was different, not fixed, but alert, like something had shifted and everyone knew it. He stepped into the temporary operations room where Ezra and Teresa were reviewing the modified staffing board. The chart still had gaps, but fewer than last week. A couple of temps had returned for a second round, rare, but encouraging. A new hire was shadowing Lewis on the floor. Everyone was watching, but no one was whispering. Victor set the folder down. We're moving forward with the rotation Ezra outlined, he said. Cross-training begins this Friday. No more single-point failures if someone calls out. Teresa nodded without hesitation. We've already blocked time for it. I'll handle the pairings. Victor looked to Ezra. What about restocking protocol? Ezra tapped a clipboard, consolidated into one log. Teresa and I sign off before anything hits a shelf. No more wondering who said what. Victor nodded once. Good. Keep it tight. He left them to it and walked the perimeter of the warehouse, stopping briefly to speak to teams in motion. He didn't linger. He didn't hover. He just made sure they knew he saw them. At Station 7, a woman named Bria was adjusting the calibration on a label printer. She had only been there 3 weeks, but her task flow was smooth, deliberate. Victor waited until she finished. You're Bria, right? She turned, surprised. Yes, sir. You designed the new barcode template? Yes, she said cautiously. The old one was cutting off product codes. I rebuilt it over the weekend. You did that on your own time? I didn't want people pulling the wrong items again. It was causing returns. Victor studied her a moment. I want you to meet with our logistics software team next week. We're building a new interface for inventory. I want someone who actually uses it involved. Bria blinked. Me? Yes, you, she nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. Victor walked away without ceremony. He didn't need to explain that kind of decision. Near the loading docks, he noticed Tim speaking to the compliance officer. Julia had returned to wrap up the audit, and Victor had instructed her to observe, not just report. She stood with a small notepad, listening intently as Tim pointed out inconsistencies in the loading logs. Not complaints, just facts. Victor waited until they finished, then approached. Julia spoke first. We've identified 3 recurring issues in inventory reconciliation. 2 are procedural, 1 is behavioral. What's the behavioral one? A floor lead named Marco has been overriding inventory counts without verification. He's also dismissed concerns raised by temps. 1 walked off mid-shift after a confrontation yesterday. Victor turned to Tim. You saw this. Tim nodded once. Marco told the kid to stop whining and just scan what's on the label. Thing is, the label was wrong. Victor looked toward the far end of the warehouse. Marco was working the inbound dock, clipboard in hand, issuing instructions while barely glancing at the pallets. Victor motioned for Julia to follow, and they walked together. When they reached him, Marco didn't look up. Marco, Victor said. He turned, confused at first. Then his posture shifted. Yes, sir. I'm told you've overridden inventory logs without product verification. Is that accurate? I've been adjusting for speed. Sometimes the paperwork doesn't match the freight. I make the call. Victor's voice stayed level. And when a temp flagged a discrepancy yesterday, how did you respond? Sir, with respect, half these guys don't know a brake caliper from a carburetor. I can't stop and explain everything. Victor's gaze didn't move. Did you say stop whining and scan what's on the label? Marco hesitated. I might have said something like that. It was a busy hour. Victor turned to Julia. Documented, Julia nodded. 3 statements, 2 from witnesses, 1 from the temp who quit. Victor looked back at Marco. You're done here, pack your things. Security will escort you out. Marco's face twitched. I've been here over a year, then you should know better. But Victor raised a hand. I don't tolerate disrespect, not from managers, not from anyone. You lost the right to lead the moment you decided your pride mattered more than accuracy or people. Marco opened his mouth again but thought better of it. He turned without another word and walked toward the stairs. Victor turned to Julia. Review his override history. Flag every shipment he touched. Already started, she said. The rest of the day passed without incident but not without weight. Word spread fast, not through gossip, through presence. People moved differently, not slower, not faster, just steadier. Like someone had taken a hand off their shoulders. By late afternoon, Victor called a short meeting in the break room. Not mandatory, no chairs. Just a circle of 20-odd people, some with gloves still in their back pockets, others wiping grease from their palms. He waited until the last person entered, then spoke. You've seen a lot of changes in the last 10 days, some overdue, some uncomfortable, and more are coming. No one interrupted. This place doesn't get better because someone like me shows up and waves a clipboard. It gets better when people like you are empowered to speak, act, and improve without fear. That's the culture we're building. A few heads nodded. One person crossed their arms but didn't leave. I've authorized 5 permanent roles to replace the rotating temp slots. We'll begin interviewing internal candidates tomorrow. Ezra and Teresa will lead that process, not me. Ezra shifted beside him, absorbing the weight of it without flinching. I'm also launching an operations council. 1 rep from each shift, chosen by their peers, paid for their time, tasked with meeting monthly to review conditions, equipment, and policy. Bria raised her hand slightly. Will that include warehouse layout? It will now, Victor said. A low ripple of conversation passed through the group. He waited, then added, we're not perfect, we won't be, but every step is accountability. And that starts with me. When the meeting ended, people didn't rush out. They stayed, talking in pairs, reviewing task lists, even offering feedback unprompted. Victor stood near the door, listening without inserting himself. He didn't need to be the center. He just needed to be present. Later that evening, as the last truck left the dock and the lights dimmed 1 row at a time, Victor sat alone at the folding desk upstairs. He reviewed the day's logs, then pulled out a single sheet of paper, a handwritten note from Ezra detailing a proposed mentorship program for new hires. Nothing formal, just pairing experienced employees with newcomers for their first 3 weeks. Victor smiled faintly, not out of pride but recognition. This was what change looked like. Not in headlines or press releases, but in quiet proposals. In people staying 5 minutes longer because someone finally listened. In a parking lot with no more fees and a warehouse with fewer ghosts. He folded the paper and placed it in his bag. Warehouse 6 wasn't fixed, but it was no longer broken in silence, and that made all the difference.